guys. A very good morning, good afternoon, and a good evening to you all, to whatever time you're watching this lecture. Well, today we are going to begin a very interesting topic, a new course, that is thermodynamics. And what is the importance of this course for you? Well, all class 11 students, well, this is a must course for you. You have to understand it completely because there's going to be no examination, be it NEET or be it JEE, where there's going to be no question asked from this topic. So this is going to be very important for you, and the students generally find it to be a bit tough, and so I'm going to try my level best to make it as simple for you as possible. And the only request would be that please be with me for all the lectures so that you have a thorough understanding of the concept and you can excel in your examination. Now, what is thermodynamics? So thermodynamics, this is made up of two words. One is thermo and the other is dynamics. Thermo refers to heat and dynamics to motion. You must have studied it in physics, static and dynamic. So static is stationary and dynamics motion. So thermodynamics would refer to heat in motion, or a better word would be flow of heat. And flow of heat must have made you remember certain things that you've studied in your junior classes. Yes, heat flows from a higher temperature to a lower temperature, and a very common example that you study for that is that you keep a cup of tea on table. Just like that, what is going to happen after some time? Well, it is going to become cold. Why? Because the cup of tea was hot, the surrounding temperature was cooler. So heat flowed from a higher temperature to a lower temperature. So is thermodynamics the flow of heat? Well, flow of heat is going to be a part of thermodynamics. So that is also thermodynamics, but thermodynamics, as you're going to learn now, is going to have a much wider meaning. Photosynthesis, respiration, digestion, making up of food, burning fuel, production of electricity, well, everything is going to be thermodynamics. Even the going up of the rocket is also going to be involving the study of thermodynamics. So this is going to be a very important course for you people. We are going to have an introductory class today where we are going to understand what is thermodynamics, what are the importance or the objectives of thermodynamics, its limitations, and then we will be moving on to understanding some important terms which we are using in thermodynamics. And the terms that we are going to learn today is going to be a system, surroundings, and boundary. So I hope you're going to enjoy your learning with me. I'm Dr. Ritu Johar, your educator from the channel H2O, the A to Z of chemistry. So let us begin the learning. So thermodynamics, this we also refer to in chemistry as chemical energetics, chemical reacting related to chemical substances or chemistry, and energetics referring to energy. And this is any form of energy, just not heat energy. So the branch of chemistry that deals with energy changes taking place during various physical processes and chemical reactions, we refer to this as thermodynamics. So what is going to be the importance of studying thermodynamics apart from your examination point of view? Well, first of all, this helps us predict the feasibility or spontaneity of a reaction. So we have taken two substances, we make them react at a certain condition of temperature, pressure, and the concentration of those substances, whether at the temperature pressure conditions that reaction is going to be feasible or not, we come to know from the study of thermodynamics. Then to understand the energy changes involved during a reaction. So you've studied about in your junior classes endothermic, exothermic reactions. Endothermic reactions are those reactions which you have to supply energy so that the substances they are going to react. And exothermic reaction is going to be where along with the product some amount of energy is released. So how do we come to know about those various changes that are involved in a reaction? Well, we come to know from the study of thermodynamics. Next, to predict the yield of the products. So how much of the product is going to be formed? Well, the two substances they react, but will they be producing an appreciable amount of the product or not? There is going to be advantageous to us to use that reaction to produce a particular substance, because in a reaction, well, there are going to be many ways that we can produce a substance. So which one should we choose? So all this, the yield of the product, this is going to be studied in the course on thermodynamics. So to generalize the experimental results again, the study of thermodynamics is going to be very important. So you've done one experiment, you have the results of that, you use that experimental study for the benefit of understanding of other system of reactions. So here again, thermodynamic study is going to be very important. Now the study of thermodynamics, this is based upon 4 generalizations, and these 4 generalizations we call them as laws. So laws of thermodynamics, which are going to be first law of thermodynamics, second law, third law, and zeroth law. So the whole study of thermodynamics is based upon these 4 laws. And very interestingly, you will find that these laws, they are applicable to all phenomena of nature. But again, more interesting is that we do not have any formal proof of these laws. So when we learn about these laws, that first law says this, second law says this, well, if you ask me what is the proof of that law, well, there is no proof. The only thing is that, well, these laws, they are applicable to all phenomena of nature. So that is sufficient for us, that we should remember them and apply them for various processes. Okay. So now thermodynamics, this has many advantages, but along with that, there are going to be a few limitations also. First of all, the laws of thermodynamics, they apply only to matter in bulk and not to individual atoms or molecules. So you have to have a large collection of atoms and molecules, for example, elements, compounds, when they are going to be reacting, well, we will be applying the laws of thermodynamics. But we cannot apply them to an atom of a certain element or a molecule of a certain compound. So it has to be matter in bulk when we are going to apply these laws of thermodynamics. Next, it can only predict the possibility of a process but not its success. So these laws of thermodynamics, well, they are based upon the study of the start of a reaction and the end of the reaction. It does not tell us about in between what is happening, the path of the reaction, that we do not come to know. Okay, so therefore we can only predict the possibility of a process because we do not know the path, how many hurdles can be there. Okay, so for example, I know that I have to travel from point A to point B. Fine. So I know point A, I know point B. So I should be able to travel from point A to point B because I know both of these places. But in between, whether the road is correct or not, it is broken or not, will I be able to reach from A to B or not, I do not know. So the thermodynamics, this can only predict the possibility of a process but not its success, because it does not tell us about the path of the reaction. Okay. And then it does not also tell us about the rate of the reaction, whether the reaction is going to be a fast reaction, a slow reaction, whether it is going to take place in 1 minute or it is going to take 10 minutes. We have no idea. It may even take 10 days, 100 days and 1 year. So we do not come to know anything about the rate of a reaction from the study of thermodynamics. It does not throw any light on the mechanism of a reaction. So how the reaction is proceeding, we do not come to know of that. So there are certain limitations of thermodynamics which we take up in the study of other courses. But well, even then, the study of thermodynamics is very much important to us. So now we will be starting with the study of actual thermodynamics. So now we are going to learn some important terms which are going to be used in the study of thermodynamics, which are very important for you people to understand because constantly we are going to use those terms. So first of all, you will be learning about system, surrounding and boundary. What do they mean? So first of all, what is a system? This is that part of the universe which we have selected for the thermodynamic study. Then the surrounding is going to be the space outside the system which we have not included in the thermodynamic study. I'll just now give you an example also. And boundary or the wall is going to be the region which separates the system from the surroundings. Okay, so with this diagram, let us understand what do all these mean? So first of all, we have a system. For example, we have a room, in which you are studying at the present moment. Fine. So that room becomes the system. And everything in the universe which is surrounding your room is going to be called as the surrounding. So everything in the universe which is not your room is called as the surrounding, and the walls of your room which are separating your room from the rest of the universe will be called as the boundary or the wall. Okay, so I hope first of all this is clear to you. What is a system, what is surrounding, and what is a boundary? Another example, if we take, well, if we take a beaker in which I put some water. Fine, so I'll just put like this. Okay, so I have water, and I'm going to study what happens to this water when I'm going to heat it up. Fine, so I am just going to study about what happens to this water. So my system is this beaker where I have that water which is getting heated up. So this is my system. Then what is going to be the surrounding? Everything in the universe except this beaker, this is going to be the surrounding. Okay, and then the wall of the beaker, well, this is going to be what? The boundary. Okay, so I hope this is clear. What is the system, what is surroundings, and what is a boundary? Now, very importantly, what you have to remember is a system which we have selected for the thermodynamic study. This must be finite, not infinite. Okay, and it should be macroscopic, because we've just now studied that the laws of thermodynamics, they will be applicable only for bulk matter. It is not going to be applicable for atoms and molecules. So we will not be having such a system which is a microscopic system. Okay. So now that you understand what is a boundary, let us see a few types of boundaries, and the boundaries we call them as walls. So the first type of walls that we will be learning about is the real and the imaginary wall. So what is the real wall? It is going to be that boundary which coincides with the real physical surfaces. And an imaginary wall is going to be that boundary which does not coincide with real physical surfaces. So what do I mean by this? Well, let us take an example. I have a glass. In this glass, I have put some water. Okay. So what is going to be my system? This glass of water is going to be the system. And everything outside this glass is going to be the surroundings. Right? And the glass, the beaker in which we have kept the water, well, that is going to form the wall or the boundary. Now, what type of wall is it? Well, it is going to be called as a real wall because we can see it. This is a boundary which does mark with real physical surface. So this is called as a real wall because we can see this boundary between the system and the surrounding. Okay. Now, just see this line that I'm drawing over here. What does this line signify? Well, this line signifies that below this line we have water, and above this line what do we have? Well, it is going to be the surrounding air. Isn't it? Yes, it is. Can you see actually this demarcation between water and air? No, you cannot see it. But yet you know that below this line, well, we are going to have water, and above it is going to be air. So what would be this demarcating line? It does not actually exist, but you know that the top surface of the layer, the top surface of the water, that is forming a boundary between the water and the surrounding air. So such a wall we call as an imaginary wall. It is not actually existing, but still we know that this is the place where water and air, they are getting separated from each other. The system and surrounding, they are getting separated from each other. So real wall we can see, and imaginary wall we cannot see, yet both of them, they are separating the system from the surroundings, right? The next we have is the rigid and the flexible wall. So what is a rigid wall and what is a flexible wall? So a rigid wall is going to be that wall which has a fixed shape and position, whereas a flexible wall is going to be that wall which has no fixed shape and position. Now what do I mean by this? Again, let us take the example of your room. Okay, and another example I'm taking here is of a balloon. Now in your room there is some air, that is why you are living in it, otherwise you would have not survived. Similarly, there is air in the balloon also. So the room forms a system, the balloons form a system, and surrounding that room and surrounding that balloon, whatever is there in the universe, that will be forming the surroundings. Okay, and the wall of the room and the wall of the balloon, what are these? They are the walls or the boundaries, okay, which are separating the air inside the room and the balloon from the surroundings. Clear? I think no problem about that. Now what type of wall is the wall of the room and what type of wall is that of a balloon? Are they same? No, they are not. If you consider the wall of your room, well, the wall is going to be a fixed shape and a fixed position. The shape is not going to change of the wall of your room unless you're going to break it and make a new one. Similarly, the position of the wall of your room is also fixed. It is not that you will go to school and when you come back, you will find that the wall of your room, this is in your neighborhood, some other house, right? So that is not going to happen. It is going to be there where you left while going to school. So that is fixed. But what about the balloon? Well, the wall of the balloon is not of a fixed shape. You must have seen in the market also that if, or even you would have played with a balloon, that you can make a balloon of various shapes. Even a filled balloon of air, well, you can press the air into some other corner and change the shape. Fine. So the shape of the balloon is not fixed because the wall is what? It is flexible. Okay. Whereas if you talk about the position, for example, you left it in one corner, the balloon, you left it in one corner, and when you come back, well, you find it at some other corner. So even that wall is not fixed, right? And uh, there was air in the balloon, and after some time, what do you find? That the air inside has leaked out, right? And then the wall of the balloon has gone in. So the position as well as the shape of the wall of the balloon is not fixed. Therefore, we call it as a flexible wall. Whereas the wall of your room, we will be calling it as a rigid wall. Now in chemistry, the example of a rigid and a flexible wall, that is going to be important. So here I have a vessel. In this vessel, I have fitted a piston which can move up and down by the application of pressure. So if you're going to apply some pressure on the piston, well, this will go down, decrease the volume of the vessel, and if you push it upwards, it will go up, the volume of the vessel will increase. So this is what you have studied a lot in the course on states of matter. Now, what is this type of wall? The vessel wall. So this is going to be a rigid wall because this is fixed in shape as well as in position. Whereas now what about this wall that the piston is making? It is also separating the air inside, whatever is inside of this vessel, with the surroundings, right? So surrounding air, and if even it was empty, there must be some air inside, or if you have filled some gas in it, so there is a gas inside. It is being separated by the wall of this piston. And this wall is not fixed in position. You can move this wall up and down. So this is a flexible wall. Okay, so I hope now you will understand what is the difference between a flexible and a rigid wall, and we are going to use it quite a number of times. The next we have is impermeable wall and permeable wall. So impermeable wall is going to be that which prevents the passage of matter through it, whereas permeable is going to allow the passage of matter through it. Now again, an example do we need for that? Yes. So we have your room back again. Now you're standing outside your room and you want to enter it. Can you enter your room through the wall? You're not a ghost, so you'll not be able to do that. Ghosts can, right? So from one room into the other, they can travel crossing through the walls also, but we cannot. So for you, what is this wall? Well, this is impermeable because this is not allowing the passage of matter, which is you, through it. Okay, so for you, this wall is going to be impermeable. But now this room, this has a door and the door is open. Can you go in? Yes, you can go in through the door. So for you now, this door is acting as a permeable wall because this allowed the passage of you into the room. Okay, so I hope this is clear. What is an impermeable wall and what is a permeable wall? Another very good example can be a cell membrane, right? So you have studied in your junior classes in biology that a cell membrane is selectively permeable. What does that mean? It is going to allow the passage of certain substances and it is going to not allow the passage of certain substances. So there is a substance A which was allowed in. What would it say? Well, it would say that the cell membrane, this is permeable. And there is a substance B which was not allowed to go in. So what would it say? Well, it would say that the cell membrane is impermeable. Okay, so I hope now you understand even the meaning of impermeable and permeable. So all these things, they are going to be repeatedly used in the study of thermodynamics. That is why we are paying a lot of time understanding each and every term. Now the next we have is a diathermic wall and an adiabatic wall, and this is going to be the most important, so please be very attentive. Okay, so first of all we have a diathermic wall. Diathermic is going to mean, well, that it is going to allow the flow of energy through it, but it will not allow the passage of matter through it. Okay, so it is not going to allow you to enter in, but well, if outside it is quite cold, well, the inside of the room is also going to become cold. Okay, even if it was at a lower higher temperature, if it's outside cold, your room also gets cold, but it did not allow you to enter in. So what would be it? It would be a diathermic wall. Another example would be that I have a metallic vessel. In this metallic vessel, what I have done is I have just closed it from everything. It's a closed container. There is no way to open that. Fine. And in this I have some water. And from outside I start using some heater and I start heating the vessel from outside. Okay, so what will happen? Well, the water inside this will become hot. How did it become hot? Because there was the allowing of heat energy to travel inside. But now I keep on heating it and the water starts boiling. When water starts boiling, what will be forming? Well, water vapors will be formed. But these water vapors will not be allowed to go out. So whatever matter was inside this vessel, but it remained inside, but energy went in. So this is what we call as a diathermic wall. Okay, so it does not allow matter to go inside, but it allows energy to go inside or outside. So through the wall, the transfer of energy is possible, but not of matter. And then we have is an adiabatic wall. An adiabatic wall is neither going to allow the passage of matter nor energy. So for example, this vessel, now I insulate it. Okay, so when I insulate it, just like a thermos flask, so I have insulated it. Now what will happen? Even if I have a hot temperature outside, well, this is if there is something cold kept inside, it is a cold coffee that you are taking, carrying somewhere. Well, what will happen is that outside it is hot, but your cold coffee, this will remain cold because you have provided an insulation, and this insulation did not allow even the passage of heat energy through it. Okay, but just remember that the insulation of the thermos flask, this is not 100% good insulation. So after some time, probably 5-6 hours or 10 hours even, well, the cold coffee may get warm. Okay, so but in general what you have to remember is that if we say that we have an adiabatic wall, then it is not going to allow either matter or energy to travel across it. Okay, so these are the different types of walls that you have to remember, and wherever they are going to be used, you should be knowing what they mean. Keep on writing everything as notes. That is going to be very important when you are going to revise. Okay, just do not just keep on looking at the things. You will be understanding the concept, but when you will be revising, what you will be requiring is your own notes. So keep on building up your notes. So now, while studying these different types of boundaries, did you realize what were the interactions between the system and the surrounding taking place? What type of things that could get exchanged between the system and the surrounding? Well, there was two types of exchanges that was happening. One was the exchange of matter and the other was exchange of energy. For example, exchange of matter, when does that happen? Well, we took a glass in which there was water. If we heat that, water changes into water vapor and goes into the surrounding. So that is going to be exchange of matter. So matter can be exchanged with this between the system and surrounding if the boundary is imaginary, okay, or the boundary is permeable, or some part of the boundary is imaginary and the rest is permeable. So then only matter can exchange between the system and the surrounding. If you have a closed vessel, there is no way out for that water vapors. So how will matter get exchanged between the system and surrounding? Fine, I hope this is clear. And then we have the exchange of energy. So exchange of energy, this can happen by two ways when we talk about thermodynamics: exchange of heat energy and work. So work is also a form of energy, right? So exchange of heat energy, this can happen if the boundary is diathermic. It allows the transfer of energy, then that boundary is called as diathermic. Okay, so if the boundary is diathermic, well, even if it is not a imaginary boundary, it is a real boundary and it is an enclosed vessel, well, then also we can have the transfer of energy. And then we have work. Well, work is going to be when the volume of the system changes. So that is also going to be exchange of energy. For example, if we take this vessel in which we have fitted a piston, well, when we are going to apply pressure on this piston, we are going to force it down. Well, it is said that if there is some gas inside it, we are doing some work on the gas. Okay, so that is also an exchange of energy, and for this the boundary has to be flexible. So now you understand where all we can use these different terms of the boundaries. Great. So next we are going to discuss the various type of systems that we can have, and the first classification is going to be based upon the interactions between the system and the surroundings, whether there is going to be exchange of matter or exchange of energy, or both of them or none of them. So on the basis of this, we have first of all an open system. Open system is going to be the one which can exchange matter as well as energy with the surrounding. For example, evaporation of water from the beaker, photosynthesis occurring in plants can exchange matter as well as energy with the surrounding. So looking at the evaporation of water from a beaker, so this is a beaker in which we have taken some water, and on heating the water is going to evaporate and it is going to form vapors. So what this means is the matter which was existing in the beaker in the form of liquid water, well, this is going into the surroundings as water vapors. So this is the exchange of matter from the system into the surrounding. Similarly, now looking at the wall of the beaker, well, this is going to be what wall? It is going to be a real wall, whereas the one between water and the vapors is going to be the imaginary wall. So the real wall, this is not going to be able to exchange matter, but what it can exchange is going to be heat. So heat is going to be dissipated even from the wall of the beaker. Okay, so here what do we have? We have exchange of matter as well as energy. From the real wall, there is going to be exchange only of heat, whereas from the imaginary wall, exchange of matter as well as heat is going to take place. So such a system is going to be called as an open system. Next we have is a closed system. So a closed system may exchange energy, but matter cannot be exchanged with the surrounding. For example, boiling of water in a closed vessel. So now we have closed the vessel, it is no more open. So the water vapors which are going to be formed by the boiling of water, they will remain in the vessel. They will not escape out. When they are not going to escape out in the surrounding, this means whatever was the matter initially, after some time also when you are going to assess, well, the amount of matter, this remains same in the system. So there is going to be no exchange of matter, but well, again heat exchange is possible. Okay, so such a system is going to be called as a closed system. And here what are going to be the walls of the system? Well, this is going to be diathermic walls. Diathermic walls, well, there is no exchange of matter, but exchange of energy is possible. And next we have the isolated system. So isolated system, this can exchange neither energy nor matter with the surrounding. For example, if we take some sodium and add this to water in a sealed container, okay, so it is insulated from all sides, nothing can escape out, even heat cannot escape out. So when sodium, metal and water, they are going to react, what is going to be formed is hydrogen gas, and a lot of heat energy is also produced. But now everything remains in. Okay, so the hydrogen gas also remains, the heat energy that has been produced, that is also going to remain in. So there is going to be no exchange of either heat or matter with the surroundings. So such a system is called as an isolated system. So quick recap into the discussion of the three types of system with this diagram. Matter we are going to represent with a green arrow, and energy with the red arrow. So a system which can exchange matter as well as energy with the surroundings, we will be calling it as an open system, as in the case of water taken in the open beaker. Then we have system exchanging energy but not matter with the surroundings, that we will be calling it as the closed system, as in the case of boiling of water in a closed vessel. And then we have a system which cannot exchange matter or energy with the surroundings, just like this insulated vessel in which we were reacting water with sodium. Well, this we call as a isolated system. Now, no system is going to be 100% isolated system. There is going to be some loss of energy always taking place. So if you are asked in the examination, give example of an isolated system, well, the answer is going to be the universe. When we take the whole universe as a system, where is it going to exchange energy and matter with? So the whole universe is an example of a perfect isolated system, without which there is going to be no system which is going to be perfectly isolated. Okay, so there is going to be some amount of energy loss always. For example, just now we talked about the thermos flask. So the thermos flask, there is going to be some loss of energy always taking place. That is why the flask is very good also after about 10 hours, 15 hours or 24 hours. Well, whatever you have kept in that flask, that is also going to be losing its temperature. Okay. So based upon the next system of classification, we have another two types of system, the macroscopic system and the microscopic system. So macroscopic system is going to be consisting of a large number of atoms, ions or molecules, for example, earth, glass full of water, a sample of gas, etc. And the measurable properties which are associated with the macroscopic system, we call them as macroscopic properties. For example, temperature, pressure, concentration, mass, composition, density, enthalpy, refractive index, surface tension, etc. They are all called as macroscopic properties because we measure them for a large number of atoms, ions or molecules for a bulk of matter. Okay, and then we have the microscopic system, which consists of a single or a few particles, for example an oxygen molecule, few water molecules, etc. And what do you have to remember? Well, the laws of thermodynamics, they are going to be applicable only to the macroscopic system, and the thermodynamic variables like pressure, volume, temperature, internal energy, which we are going to denote by U. This is going to be something that you will be learning later in the lectures. Then we have enthalpy. G stands for Gibbs free energy, S stands for entropy. So all these things, they are going to be upcoming lecture learning things, right? So the thermodynamic variables, they are going to be defined only for the macroscopic systems, never for the microscopic systems. The next, we can also classify the types of system into a real system and an ideal system. So what is a real system? The system which we take for the experimental studies, actually what we are doing in experiments, that system is called as a real system. Whereas ideal system is the theoretical work, and it is ideal in scientific sense. However, in actual practice, no system is going to be ideal. Ideal system is only considered to simplify the thermodynamic laws. For example, the last course that you studied about the states of matter, right? So in the states of matter, you learned first of all about the ideal gas equation. Fine. So then ideal gas equation was considering everything, that there was no interaction between the molecules of a gas, etc. So all those assumptions that we had taken for the kinetic gas theory, which we used to frame the ideal gas equation, but really those things was not happening. So then we had to modify, and then we learned the real gas equation. So similarly, the system in which we are going to actually take for the experimental studies, that is going to be a real system, but we just approximate it to an ideal system so that we can easily apply the thermodynamic laws. Fine. So finally, the last type of system that we have are the homogeneous system and the heterogeneous system. Homo refers to same and hetero refers to different. So a system which is going to consist of a single phase only, we refer to this as a homogeneous system. Therefore, all the components, they are going to be uniform throughout the whole system. For example, if you look at this reaction, ammonia gas is going to produce nitrogen and hydrogen. So here what do you see is that ammonia is also gas, nitrogen produces also gas, and hydrogen produces also a gas. So all the three components, the reactant and the products, they are gases. Fine. Similarly, you can have a liquid, you can have a solid, you can have a solution of a solid in a liquid. So solution is going to be again single phase. Mixture of two or more miscible liquids, again that will be a single phase. But when we have a heterogeneous system, they are going to be multiple phases separated from each other by definite bounding surfaces, but each phase in itself is going to be uniform throughout. For example, we have ice in contact with water. So wherever ice is contacting with water, there is going to be a bounding surface separating the two phases, right? Two or more immiscible liquids, like we have water and oil. So there is a layer of oil above water. So those two, they are immiscible. So that we call as a heterogeneous system. Insoluble solid in contact with a liquid in contact with a gas, just like we have water and water vapor. So this is going to be a heterogeneous system when there are going to be multiple phases, and when it is going to be a single phase, we call that as a homogeneous system. So that would be all for this lecture. I hope you've enjoyed your learning with me today, and you know what is a system, what is the surroundings, and what is a boundary, and what are the various types of boundaries, and what are the various types of systems now. And in the next lecture, we are going to continue this discussion further. We are going to learn some more important terms that we are going to use in thermodynamics. So see you again. Have a nice day. God bless you.